All right, welcome back to Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5, always presented by John Daspit and the Daspit Law Firm. It's daspitlaw.com. All you got to do is call 713-CALL-NOW. By the way, John and his firm, they're personal injury attorneys. They are bringing you soccer, but more importantly, you get in a car accident, boat, motorcycle, you need the best in personal injury attorneys. Clearly, the best in Houston, the best in other markets around the country. It is the Daspit Law Firm, daspitlaw.com, 713-CALL-NOW. Great friend, former U.S. international, Hall of Famer, working for Apple right now. He's Marcelo Balboa, joins us now. Marcelo, thanks for coming on as always.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm happy. I got the news. You told me that you're going to be doing the Sporting Houston game, which made you a natural to come on the program. Let's just give you a broad scope question here, just off the top. This matchup, what jumps out to you?
Wow. I think there's a lot. There's not just one. I think you look at the form Sporting Kansas City was in, knocking off the #1 seed. That's a huge, huge upset. But if you also look at Sporting Kansas City's team, you know what kind of team they have. And now that everybody's healthy, they're a dangerous team. They're a team that has just caught fire at the right time. On the other hand, you look at Houston that is playing with a lot of confidence, enjoying soccer, getting results at the right time. And even though you won in PKs, it doesn't really matter because we know that RSL, how well Pablo's teams are going to defend you, and they're going to make life difficult for you. And what a great challenge before you take on a Sporting Kansas City team who Peter Vermes will coach. And we know that defensively, Peter's teams are pretty tight. They're pretty compact. So I think it's a great matchup. Unfortunately, I am very happy because the two teams that I've picked, Orlando and Houston, to reach the final, are in both semifinals of the conferences. So I'm still looking good in my bet.
You are looking good. He's Marcelo Balboa, former U.S. international, will be in town to call the game for Apple in Spanish. All right, so I got to take you into Hector Herrera and the influence that he's had, and you've done some Dynamo games already this year. How about some thoughts on what Herrera has produced and really helping revolutionize and turn things around here in Houston?
You know what? I think it starts, and I'll be honest, it started with the ownership giving Ben Olsen the job. Because talking to Ben and listening to Ben, what he's learned at DC, what worked, what didn't. And when he came in here to Houston, the one thing you have to do, Glenn, is the players got to believe and buy into what you're selling, okay? And when you get the leader of this team, the national team captain, your captain, you need to let him feel like he's a part of this. He's going to help change the culture. He's going to help change what he wants on the field. And I think Ben Olsen did a great job with Hector and said, this is your team. You have to lead this team. You have to do this and you have to do that. And he laid the groundwork for it to be Hector's team. And I think when you look at this team, the respect he demands on the field, the way he's playing this year, everything you would want in Hector, you're getting this year.
You know, it's funny. I was doing the game, I don't know, maybe it was 2 games ago, and I saw Hector really having a go at somebody, and it wasn't a rookie who was having a go at.
It was in Salt Lake City. Yeah.
I remember that. And I'm saying to myself, it's almost like it jumped out and hit me in the face because I hadn't seen any of that, you know, prior to his arrival here. And that's not a good sign when people are all accepting. I think Ben Olsen is a highly intelligent man, and he knows as any coach that he has to get his superstar on the same page. No question.
They've got to buy in. If they don't buy in, then the team doesn't buy in.
All right. Aesthetics. You know, we're talking to Marcelo Balboa. What has been so refreshing for me after a lot of years of watching some pretty mundane soccer, if we're being honest, you saw it too. It's just an interesting team to watch, not only with Hector orchestrating it, but there's all these interesting pieces and the tight interplay. Now you got a little width with Griffin Dorsey. It's a fun watch, the Houston Dynamo.
You know what? They're entertaining, Glenn, and everybody, when a new coach takes over, you get used to hearing, we want to play offensive soccer. We want to play attractive soccer. We want to play sexy soccer. And we all do the same thing. We all roll our eyes saying, yeah, we've heard that speech before. We got it. But in this point, God, Ben has done a nice job of mixing good technical players with athleticism around it that can run and scratch and fight. And you've got a good blend right now. It seems to be working. Knock on wood, you've stayed in the majority of the season. You've stayed injury free, which I think helps. And it's just with Carrasquilla, and you just keep going down the list, and you're like, man, this is a good team. And are they flying under the radar? I don't think so. People said that the other day. Wow, Houston, you're not really talking about Houston or Orlando. Okay, that doesn't mean you're flying under the radar. That just means you're doing your job. You're going about it, and you're letting the other big teams. Listen, everybody's talking about Seattle, LA, right? That's the big matchup in the Western Conference Final. People keep talking about that. Great, talk about them. We're going to do our job. Hopefully, we'll meet one of those teams in the final. Just like when we talk about Columbus and Orlando, they're kind of doing their own thing. They're kind of flying under the radar. People keep saying Orlando came second in the Eastern Conference. They've got a very good team. They're in good form. And a guy like Oscar, listen, eventually he's going to break that hitch of not reaching a final. And I think with the team he has now and the way he's changed his coaching and is more stable with lineups and stuff, listen, I think both those teams are going to be very hard to beat.
Marcelo Balboa joining us. Orlando over in the East will take on Columbus, and then you've got Cincinnati. And I think outside of Cincinnati, I think everybody's a possibility. Cincinnati put a heck of a body of work together. They got a very difficult game with Philadelphia. We'll get back to that in a minute. Let's stick on Dynamo and Sporting here. I'm taking us in the wrong direction. 4-3-3, Peter Vermees, very aggressive. Both teams like to press. Both teams can hit you in transition. Do you see this one as a very open game?
I've never seen an Eastern Conference semifinal be an open game. So do I expect Sporting Kansas City to press at times? Yes. Do I expect Houston being at home to step up and maybe play a high block or a mid block? 100% I do. I listen, when Peter's smart, when he loses the ball away from home, he drops into that low block. He gets those 11 guys behind, and he defends and he defends and he hits you on the counterattack. With Pulido, Pulido's done a great job in the first two games against St. Louis, playing with his back, holding the ball up and connecting with the midfield. And now all of a sudden, Shelton's gone. All of a sudden, Russell's gone. Shallowy's gone. So they've done a great job of doing what they do. Now Houston, for me, the longer it goes on, the more Houston's going to feel the pressure to get that goal, to send more numbers. And that kind of falls into Sporting Kansas City's game plan. So I see this being more of a tactical game, but I also see Houston putting a lot of pressure on Sporting Kansas City that night.
Yeah, they are the home team. It is a singular game. There's finality to this. And to your point, if they tuck in Davis, and I'm thinking it would be Tim Leibold getting the start for the injured Ndembe, which is a tough one for them. But if they tuck in a little bit deeper and try to keep Griffin Dorsey in front of them, that will lead to some transitional moments, I would think.
Well, listen, it's going to end up being Shallowy versus Dorsey. That'll be an interesting matchup because Shallowy's not going to mark Dorsey. He's going to let Dorsey go. So then who's going to mark Shallowy when he kind of floats to the outside behind Dorsey as he attacks? You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see how both coaches, which is nice, a little bit more for Sporting Kansas City. They've got to watch Houston play the third game against RSL. They get to see a little bit more of a live view of watching what St. Louis and Sporting Kansas City did. So again, I think it'll be an interesting game, and I think it could be one of the more entertaining ones.
How big of a loss is Logan Ndembe at left back? I mean, he had 2 goals. He was cutting inside, actually, producing some really scintillating moments. He's an under-22 initiative from Belgium, did his ACL, and apparently played 44 minutes on a torn ACL. But how big of a loss is that based on what he did simply in that St. Louis series?
Listen, it's a huge loss because the way especially in St. Louis, Glenn, the way he was attacking and the way he was defending, it made it very difficult for the way St. Louis came out tactically. And I thought, to be honest with you, when you watch the first game, they came out wrong with playing a 4-2-3-1, and then they tried to convince us, no, Jackson was a second forward. Listen, we're not dummies. We see the game of soccer. They switched formations and they lost 4-1. They go back to Sporting Kansas City and they go back to their basically 4-4-2 diamond with 2 forwards. That's what we're used to seeing. And that allowed still Ndembe to get forward and find the space and score his goals. So they'll, again, it's not going to be the same. It's kind of down the left-hand side, but Peter will defend and defend. And if you take it to penalty kicks, right now, how do you go against Sporting Kansas City and Tim Melia in goal, the way he's been playing?
So you give them the edge in goal, Tim Melia over Steve Clark. Don't forget, Clark made a save in penalties against RSL.
Yeah, again, I think Clark's a nice goalkeeper, but when you watch the penalties and you watched what he's done over the years, Tim Melia is very good at PKs.
All right, let's go with the back fours and the defenders, and let's start with maybe if it's Leibold who gets the start, Fontes, Rosero, Davis for Sporting against Escobar, Mikhail, Sviatchenko, and Dorsey. Whose back four do you like better?
You know, it's
Toss-up.
going to be honest. You've got to go with for me. You have to go with Houston only because the fact of them coming a little better positionally than Kansas City. Kansas City fought to the end to get in. They did well against St. Louis, but you've already played, at home. Now you have to win on the road. You have to win because they're not going to get any more games at home. So again, I don't think it's going to come down to the defenders to begin with. I think it's going to come down to a mistake by a goalkeeper, one rebound at the wrong time, something in that regard. Because if you look at these teams, they're both matched up pretty well. Because you can keep looking at Houston, but then you look at Pulido. You know what I mean? You keep bouncing back and forth of what you're doing. Rodoja in the midfield compared to Herrera. Herrera, you have the advantage. You know what I mean? So but you have Kinda, who's lightning fast, and then you have Carrasquilla, you know what I mean? Coco. So it kind of, you can go back and forth in every position. And like I said, I think this is probably one of the more even matchups you'll see in the Eastern Conference or in the conference semifinals.
And Remy Voltaire is another one in midfield for Sporting. Now the Dynamo play with kind of a box midfield with Bassi and Carrasquilla. Artur holds. Then you've got Hector Herrera, who's got a free role and shows up everywhere. What do you think of that matchup in midfield, and how does Sporting maybe adjust? And it may be to your point of they're going to defend a little bit deeper maybe for periods.
You know what it's going to come down to for me is how much work is Pulido willing to do. Pulido did a lot of work in St. Louis, dropping back and helping the midfield out, almost leaving the two wingers with Shelton and Shallowy up high. They've been pinching a little bit. But Pulido did a lot of work defensively. If he can do that again, then that's going to help tremendously for that midfield. But again, worst case scenario, you'll see Russell drop, you'll see Shallowy drop, and they'll play basically a 4-5-1, which they've done before. And that can neutralize a little bit more of their midfield. They don't miss for me. Their engine, for me, if Carrasquilla decides to play not how he played the last game against RSL, because he was not good. He was frustrated. And you could see in his face with some of the fouls he took. He could have, seriously, if the referee, he could have gotten a second yellow card on a few of the grabs. He grabbed up high, he pulled. So if Carrasquilla comes out and is plugged and is ready to go in, then Sporting Kansas City could be in trouble in the midfield. But if it's the same Carrasquilla that was frustrated against RSL the last game, then I could see that pendulum swinging towards Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, I agree. He's had two very tough games. Even Ben Olsen said that. He's had two tough games.
Yep.
He's looked very hesitant around the box. Coco's going to need to
You know what he looks, Glenn? And I'm sorry to interrupt. You know what he looks like right now? He looks tired.
Yeah.
He looked tired the last two games. And when you get tired, you get frustrated. When you start getting frustrated, you get out of the rhythm of what you normally are playing. And I think this break is going to be good for him. I think it's going to be
he's off with Panama, so he's still flying and traveling and playing. So,
but getting away from your club team sometimes and playing with the national team, you're not training as hard. You know what I'm saying? That may be a good thing for him a little bit.
Well, from the Dynamo perspective and my perspective, let's hope so. I want to go back to Pulido, though, because there's nobody up front that holds the ball in either team like him, and
No.
that's such a valuable asset. Speak to that element of his game.
Listen, when we were doing both games, we were talking to Peter, and Peter was saying that it's incredible the job that Polito's done. Because I asked him, I go, listen, he didn't do much offensively. I go, but defensively, what he did that night was ridiculous. He goes, Cello, he said, listen, he goes, he defended his ass off for us 2 games in a row. He goes, but the best thing about him is look how many times he got us out of trouble by being able to hold the ball up on a first, a second, a third touch to allow, with his back towards goal, to allow our team to push up into the midfield, and he had an outlet to play out. And when I went back and I sat there going, you know what? I went back and I watched the game and I'm like, damn. I go, I didn't realize how many times he dropped into the midfield. KC played out of the back into him. He held the ball, found Kinda freaking found Shelton. And I'm like, So that's where he is valuable to this team, because his strength of being able to play with his back towards goal and hold players off and keep possession of the ball is not a lot of, I've not seen a lot of players. And I thought Klaus was pretty good at it, but Klaus didn't do it much in that series. Polito did. And that's what makes them dangerous, is Polito can hold off 1 or 2 guys, take that third touch, find the open guy, and all of a sudden they open the field, they switch the direction, and they're opening on the other side of the field. So interesting.
Yeah, for me, Alan Polito is the best hold-up player in all of Major League Soccer. In fact, in that game, there were times he had 3 or 4 defenders around him, and he's still holding the ball, creating a couple of seconds of time for the likes of Russell, Shallowy, Kinda, and others to get in and around him.
Player. Yeah. That was key, because he's able to hold it, but he's able to find and bounce it back into Kinda, and then Kinda can spring the ball in any direction he wants. So I agree.
That's a huge piece to look at on the road in Houston, that ability to hold the ball, calm the game down, get your team up the field. I mean, that's huge. I think that, you know, you put a circle around that one. Obviously, to me, I mean, they've got the better finishers, right? No question.
Kansas City?
Polito, Russell, Shallowy.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that, Shallowy's dangerous down the left-hand side. Johnny Russell's dangerous down the right-hand side, coming in with his left foot. Polito is a quality finisher. Hasn't done a lot in the playoffs offensively. But when you look at that threesome up front, you think to yourself, yeah, that's pretty dangerous. How do you, if you can stop one, how do you stop Shallowy? If you stop Shallowy and Polito, how do you stop Russell from the out? You know what I mean? So again, collective defending as a team, making sure you double down sometimes and help each other out, making sure the midfielders drop in and close the gap so they can't play into a diagonal like they did against St. Louis. There's a lot of little things. Listen, you can give up the outside. That's not a problem. You can give the outside because you can get some support, but you got to close the middle. You can't allow Sporting Kansas City to penetrate down the middle. When they do, like they did in St. Louis, and listen, 3 fantastic goals that Berkey couldn't do anything about. But you're also, you know, and I go back to the first goal from Kinda. I think it was the second goal. Norwinski, instead of coming inside and forcing him outside, Norwinski forced him inside. Kinda said, thank you. Let me go to my right foot and let me bury one in the left-hand corner. You know what I mean? You're trying to take away the strong foot and force him to his weak foot. St. Louis forced him to his strong foot and they buried it. So little tiny details is what can make or break a game, and the little details killed St. Louis.
I think you've kind of laid the game out that this is transitional moments for Sporting. The Dynamo are a very narrow team. By the way, the Dynamo are an exceptional defending team. They protected their goalkeeper from the start of the season to now, based on their possession game, their overall collective defending, the addition of Eric Sviatchenko, and the emergence of Griffin Dorsey. It's not an easy team to score goals on, as RSL knows.
Not at all. Listen, they do a nice job of defending as a group, almost like how St. Louis, when you watch St. Louis defend, it is a group effort. They know where it's space to close down. They know where to be at the right time. And Houston does the same thing. They do a nice job. They do a nice job of keeping possession. They do a nice job of keeping the rhythm. But listen, Glenn, It's a playoff game. Pressure gets to one player the next. He makes a mistake. We all know, listen, we're not rocket scientists. We all know that every game in Major League Soccer, transition is huge. It just depends on the transition, what part of the field. If Houston is transitioning from their final third and they win a ball and they take off, who cares? But if you pick a ball off in the midfield when Kansas City spread open, and that transitional moment where the ball is on their side of the field, it's much harder to defend that. So we all know transition is going to be huge, but so are set pieces. With the players you have and the players St. Louis, or the team that Kansas City has, a set piece, a corner kick could cost you a game.
This is going to be fun. I think they're going to all pick and choose moments to press and repress and double down on people. It's going to be fun. It'll lead to chances. Marcelo, safe travel. We look forward to seeing you. I'll see you at the stadium on Saturday. How's that sound? Make that Sunday.
Sunday, the 26th.
Yeah. If I'm there Saturday, I probably won't see you, but if I'm there Sunday, I will.
Maybe you're watching practice. You're watching practice. That's fine. That's fine.
Thanks, Marcelo, for coming on as always.
Anytime, buddy.
All right. That's Marcelo Balboa, has the call, the former U.S. national team center back of the Dynamo Sporting Kansas City. And that will be a single elimination playoff match. And we're all looking forward to that one. That does it tonight here for Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5, LamontBrands.com. That's where you get the T-shirts and hats. All the proceeds to the 501c charity. Go over there, get the orange with black lettering. Perfect time to do that here in the playoffs and support the fight against pediatric cancer. Producer, Guillermo Lazo Romero, we thank him as well. Brian McDonald. And until next week, we go back to Tuesday next week. It's Soccer Matters, ESPN 97.5, presented by the Daspit Law Firm.